So to get started, I came to the current work I'm doing in international affairs by chance in a lot of ways. I was able to study abroad just after the 9/11 attacks, and I left for London on September 19th, 2001, which, as you might imagine, was a very traumatic time for me. My brother was here in New York. He was ultimately okay, but it took us about 7 hours to get in touch with him, and he was in kind of a downtown area at the time. And so when I went overseas, it was at a very kind of disorienting moment. And one of the things that was very heartening was that when I got to an area called King's Cross, London, which is this really eclectic Pakistani part of the city of London, I would literally be stopped in the streets for weeks, if not months after the attacks, by people who heard my sometimes loud American accent and wanted to express grief over what they felt about the tragedy, and they baked me goods. And we had all of these really collaborative conversations about how we, meaning young people who kind of shared a moderate viewpoint on the world, could work together to win what was then called the global war on terror. And as you can imagine, having gone overseas worried that people wouldn't be able to understand exactly what I was going through, to have so many people that shared that common value system and that empathized was very goodwill building. And essentially what happened was that over the 2 years that I got to spend living there, but also coming back a lot to the States, I saw a real change in the way that we were seen in the world and the way that many people here saw the rest of the world. One of the questions that I often confronted when I would come back to the US is, it must be so tough to live abroad right now, where everyone hates Americans. And there was a real sense that people had this kind of very deep-seated enmity for our way of life. And when I would be abroad, there would also be a sense that as a country, the US had a very different value system. And for someone who had seen this real global humanity and gotten the sense that our generation really connected across borders, it was very disappointing to have strong stereotypes on both sides that kind of kept people thinking that the other was so different. And so the organization was essentially set up, Americans for Informed Democracy, to what we called Bring the World Home. One of the big concerns that we had was that people only got to see international affairs through the media. And of that, 60%, according to a number of studies, only understand the world through local television news. And for those of you that have seen local television news, it is all bad stories all the time. And so if you live in your community, you know that it's a good place, but if you just saw it on the news, you'd think your community was just about, rapes and car robberies and all of these tragic events. And we tend to see the world in the same way when we don't interact with it directly, because the way that it's connected to us is so much through these exceptional and horrifying events. And one thing that's really interesting is that after Katrina, a lot of people looked at what was going on and they said, it's like seeing a third world in our own country, because the pictures were so reminiscent of some of the things that we see from other countries. And the way that I kind of saw it was that this was our Katrina moment, was our kind of one moment where we would pop up if we were a normal country on other people's international news. So they don't see all of the good things about America during the year. They don't see all of the promise that we have. But that one moment where we're in this really desperate period where our government fails, where we have people that are absolutely excluded from the normal way of life here, where there's this community of powerlessness and this clear indication of kind of the worst of our country. That would be the only picture that people get to see. And when you think about the way that we see the rest of the world, we see them a lot of times just in their Katrina moments. And it gives us a very, very incomplete picture of the world. And after 9/11, the picture of the world that people saw, especially of the Muslim world, was a very small subset of 19 individuals. And the big concern that we had is these views of one another can become self-fulfilling. And if you start with 19 individuals who are, from this very terrible position, but then you believe that they represent this much broader group, you begin to act as if that whole group is a part of this problematic trend. And in doing so, you create and enrage a conflict. So this was the major concern that we saw. Having been abroad, we knew that there was a possibility for a global humanity to take hold and for common values to come together. And what we wanted to do was create a model that could be used to engage young people to make a difference on these issues. And essentially what we did is we looked at a lot of studies and tried to see what the opportunities were to respond to this challenge. And what we noticed was that there were a huge and growing number of young Americans who were studying abroad. So it had gone up about 300% by 2002 from 1990. And young people were connecting over the internet with peers all over the world. And I don't know how many of you, but a lot of young people now read actually foreign newspapers in foreign languages online. So the result is that while most people are only getting this very incomplete news cycle, there is this very natural community that has this tremendous knowledge source. And so the goal of this model was to harness the power of that knowledge to bring the world home and complete the picture for others. And essentially through a lot of different types of events, video conferences where you all can connect directly with peers all over the world. We've done them now with over 60 countries, through documentary screenings, which sometimes our group will be involved in, so movies are occasionally very worthwhile to go to. You can get a sense of these issues from another perspective through town hall meetings, and then through really exciting action networks. And the result of all of the young people that have had this global perspective and gotten involved is that numerous cities have actually changed their environmental policies to reduce their energy use, because we recognize that climate change is a common humanity issue that ties us all together and is a part of showing our conscience to the world. There have been communities that have gotten their universities or their cities to divest from Darfur to make sure that there's no connection between the financial interest that a community has and the killing of innocent people in a part of Africa. There have been students that have gotten their communities to decide that they wanted to be a coexistence town, and they've held a lot of dialogues around Jewish, Muslim, and Christian relations. And so through these actions, they've really created a new sense of what the world holds. And I should emphasize that these meetings have taken place everywhere from Bob Jones University to Berkeley. So they have really spanned the political spectrum and I think have hit a generational zeitgeist. It's really interesting to me how global our generation is. And I think that one of the things that's been fascinating has been to see how we have interpreted the September 11th moment. I think that for the media, there was only one story that came out, and they would go to these different places in Saudi Arabia or in Pakistan, and they would be interviewing people about these Al-Qaeda cells, and there would be no running water in the villages, and there would be no power, and there would be terrible environmental conditions, and there would be people that didn't have their full human rights. And you would see all of this in the background, but the only story was, why do they hate us? And what is interesting to me about young people is if you look at the people that are driving the climate change and the One campaign to end poverty and the genocide in Darfur and stopping that on our watch. It's all campuses and it's all youth, and I think a lot of it came out of 9/11 in the sense that I think a lot of people who have been kind of used to just taking information have just taken the information after 9/11 and kind of not really looked into all of the other issues. And I think young people, because they're in this analytic kind of moment in their lives, they're really thinking through, what do I think is important? And interestingly, I think the result is that, well, I think all young people think terrorism is extremely important, and it's something that our country has to face. There's also this sense that issues like poverty and climate and racial justice and socio-economy in our own country are incredibly